guys, welcome back to another episode of Hop, Skip and a Jump. Listen, I know it's been a while, I've been a busy gal, but I have had plans to reboot this podcast and inadvertently recorded an episode the other day. Now, I recently won an award with the Pet Industry Federation, and that was for Pet Service Business of the Year. Absolutely astounded to walk away with that award, let alone be a finalist as well. So absolutely chuffed to bits. But one of the great things about this event was that I was able to network with fellow like-minded professionals. And one of those professionals was the wonderful Michelle from Hurley's Dog Grooming in Nottingham. So we had a little meeting planned, and we were just saying really interesting things, not to toot our own trumpet, but there you go, I'm going to toot it anyway, because I think what we were talking about was super duper important. Now, we have some things in the works at the moment. We have a couple of plans bubbling away, but I wanted to show you a snippet of this conversation. It wasn't planned to be a podcast recording, but I started recording it because I was learning so much from it, and I think you lot will learn from it as well. So I'm going to stop talking. We're going to do a very bad edit and cut through to our Google Meet session. That's with Michelle from Hurley's. Make sure you follow her on Instagram and Facebook. I will be sure to tag her socials in below. Today, this is a way that you can help manage at home and stuff. And
it's definitely better than the peanut butter on the cling film around the head situation.
My God, I saw a vet share that. And I was like, that is so incredibly dangerous.
Yeah.
But also, if you're like that and you're looking, you can't see the net, you can't see it properly. You just can't.
Yeah. I think it's more the encouragement, like to be like nibbing at your head, like, you know. It's but anyway, each to the
because if you catch that quick, or there's a little arthritic joint in that toe. What's the first thing they're going to do? But to your face. That's the issue. It's your face that they're going to get.
Yeah.
But you see weird and wonderful things. This is, do you know what, right? It's going to be in a couple of weeks, but I'm booting up my podcast again, and I've got loads of questions that I want to ask you. Just your opinion on stuff. What's your opinion on hair dye for dogs?
I'm not a fan.
Okay. Tell me why you're not a fan. Why are you not a fan?
I think, to be quite honest, because it's not like creative grooming is an absolute. It's so massive now, and as part of like the grooming industry. So creative grooming, Asian grooming is like just next level now. Whereas when I started, there weren't really many people that were doing it. So I do think. I love to see creative grooming, and it's such a skill. And I think, and it's not from, I say that I don't dislike it for any reason that I think it's not kind to the dog, because as far as I'm aware, there are a lot of products out now, and most of them are friendly. Not going to cause like any damage as such. Mm-hmm. I think it's more that I'm not. It's just, I love to see it, but it's just not something that I personally do, because it's just not my style, I suppose. Mm-hmm. But a girl that used to work for me, she had a poodle that she used to do some like creative work on, like, and dyeing and stuff. But I think because we're we're a completely open salon, so we've got we're open fronted, people like, customers come in, there's nothing hidden. But when people see it being done, like as the general public, I think they're a little bit like, oh no, it's completely unnecessary, and it's whatever. So I think those that are I think when you're a professional inside, you know how much work goes into it, and you know what a skill it is to be able to do that. And hats off to people that can do it, but it's just not my bag. Really.
Yeah, I think for me it's interesting, isn't it? How we have, like, even I have an opinion about it, even though I'm not in your industry. I think it's weird. I've got a preference. So if someone adds like a little bit of colour to their dog's tail, I'm like, oh, that's fun, that's cute. Like, they have it, you've bathed them at home or whatever, and you've put a little bit of dye on. Like, I think, oh, that's crikey. The ones where it's like really detailed, like landscape kind of work across the dog. I'm thinking of the poodles that have got, you know, like the like pictures and stuff carved into the fur. Like it is like, it's an extraordinary talent. You can't argue that it's not a talent. But for me, I'm like, that doesn't sit well with me,
because of the time that it takes to do it and how long the dog is stood. Or
I think that absolutely plays a factor in it. I've watched bits about it, but I suppose if you look at kind of any groom, this is from my perspective as a non-groomer. So if you had a Labradoodle that was matted to the skin, that's going to take hours to fix. Whereas the poodle that's having all this landscaping kind of cut done on them, that's going to take hours to do. Whereas the first one's okay because it's a welfare thing. And the other, it's tricky, isn't it? It's tricky.
I do think from because I think that's the consensus from people that aren't groomers. When they see it, they think, I think there's a perception that, like, what's the point in spending like all of that time on the dog's behalf, you know, like for the dog to have to stand and endure, like, you know, the groomer doing whatever for that amount of time. From the groomer's side, it's very much a case of, when, you know, I've done competition grooming, not you know, like that, but for like breed standard styling, and you definitely select dogs that are suitable for that environment. So, you know,
they can take it in the stride.
Yeah, you know, like you would never take in a dog that would, you know, that would be a mess amongst like crowds of people, or you would, you know, and a lot of those, especially poodles, because, you know, they're even if they're not having creative grooms, they're breed standard grooms in their own, you know, in their own right. They themselves take hours, you know, can take hours to do.
And I really like the breed standard. Like, I like to see a poodle with the like little bouffant on the hips and like that. I think, oh my god, that is. But you're right. It's how is that different? To adding on a little bit of colour.
Yeah,
you know.
I think for me, like I'm the same. Like for me, it's like breed standard all the way, or just as like a welfare thing. And I think you know, I've been writing a piece for Edition Dog magazine about just kind of how I've noticed trends change over the last 10 years. And, you know, it's great that there's more of a focus on what groomers actually do in terms of how skilled they are. But equally, like, I do feel that it's very much become about an aesthetic, you know, perception, and like, oh my god, look at this like fluffy, beautifully scissored round face, and that's amazing. But actually, like, you know, for me, I love to, you know, look at more of how is that groomer like handling the dog, how are they kind of supporting the dog and helping the dog to just kind of overcome fear, aggression, or like, you know. So I view it from a different perception these days, and I think, you know, I wish there was a bit more of that on social media.
I think as well, like when I take, so Rodney, who's my cockapoo cross, he's very sensitive, and that's not me saying like, oh, he's sensitive, that's a negative. He is just a very sensitive dog. And like me and my group, god, I've known my groomer for years, and she knows that if he's been really tappy with his feet, I'm to just do the absolute bare essentials. I don't care if he comes out looking a bit choppy. I'm not looking for that polished thing. My main thing is that he's had as nice a time as possible, you know, because he doesn't like going to the groomers. However, with his coat type, I cannot manage that at home. So he has to go. It's like for me, it's a welfare thing. It's almost borderline medical care, because if I just let him kind of grow it out, and he would be matted to the skin
Yeah.
100% be a candidate for it, because he will not tolerate
Mm.
brush, or he finds it very stressful brushing. Whereas when Danny, my groomer, does it, she can, like, you know, when they have the blower on and she can see where the tats are, and just, I'm like, I don't care how he looks, just as long as, you know, just do these, because sometimes she goes, oh, he really didn't want his legs doing today, and I'm like, yeah, fine, that's fine. It's mainly under his belly and like his armpits that he can get tatty. The only thing that we do that's like a bit fun with him is he's got a mohawk cut in. That bit doesn't tat, but everywhere else, for me to manage him as best I can, because sometimes he will allow me to do a little gentle kind of, you know, brush, but not often. I just say, just take him short as you can, short as you can. What's, you know, he's in what, every six weeks, I think it is, or something like that. And even my other, sorry, go on.
No, go on.
I was going to say, my other dogs, Lily and Peggy, they've got I think you'd class it as like a double coat. So they're absolutely fine with bin brush, but Lily, I've never known a dog molt like it in my life. And I'm literally covered in white hair, and it's my own dog. But she, like, does a nice kind of like shape to her bloomers and stuff like that. But Lily will stand for that, and she's okay with that. Obviously it's not her most favorite thing in the whole world to go and have done. However, seeing my dogs and how they react when they see their Auntie Danny is, I'm like, that's enough. That tells me everything I need to know. They're even Rodney is pulling me to get into the groomers. They pull to get in, so I'm like, everything's telling me, yeah, it's stressful. We can't get away from it being that little bit stressful. But it's the same with dogs that come to see me. You know, that car journey, I can't get away from the fact that to travel to come see me, that's potentially stressful, but it's about managing that stress aspect. So for me, if I stay in the salon, the dogs, they're going absolutely wild. So I have to kind of like drop and dash. But then she'll send me a video of them all just sat there, like, you know, like Peggy's like laying down, and like,
honestly, I feel like it must be similar to, you know, when people drop their kids off at school and they're like, you know, just clinging on for dear life, crying, like, you know, don't leave me. And then as soon as they're gone, 9 times out of 10, like, they're absolutely fine. And you know, like, and you know, I feel like we're quite fortunate now that we've been going for so long that people know that, you know, we can do like these really like beautiful grooms, but if we can't, then there's a reason for that, and we'll, you know, and we'll try to like you know, put plans in place in order to, as a way forward to manage it, or, you know, and latterly, because we are, you know, I used to work one-on-one when I worked from home, but now that there's, you know, we're a team of 5 now, so and even though it is very much like one in, one out, if we do have dogs that are more anxious or stressed or vocal or whatever, then we have to consider the environment. And you know, quite often, you know, over the last 12 months, I've kind of referred people to a one-to-one groomer that just does it from home, you know, because it's just, there's so much
better experience for the dog. But it's also like you have to take into consideration like the environment that you and your staff work in.
And well, like the effects for other dogs in the salon as well. You know, it's just, there's so much stimulation for sensitive dogs that it can often just, you know, that in itself can just be too much. So you know, like, and we're lucky that most people could, like, you know, appreciate that, I think. So I
think that's about the client base you build as well. Like they get it. So like when I get, you know, say new dogs into clinic, I have to explain like I am consent based only. That what that may look like is your dog opting in and out. So I may be touching them and they may walk away. There's none of this. No, you have to sit down. No, you have to lie down. The reason that that's so important is because 4 sessions down the line, when actually they're like, oh, I'm really enjoying this, but I may touch something that's painful, they know that they can they can move away. They can move away. It just helps with that communication line. So I've had sessions sometimes where I've never actually put my hands on the dog.
Yeah.
Because for me, the dog's welfare is so much more important, and we can take longer to unpick that, you know? And that's why I think I have a lot of, well, I say dogs with big feelings. Big feelings is like my umbrella term that I use for aggression, reactivity, whether that's human, dog, traffic, nervousness, and aversion to intentional touch. Because I think we've removed so much agency from our dogs, which we have to remove agency to keep them safe in our modern world, right? We remove agency when we put a lead on them when we're walking next to a road. That's to keep them safe. But then in situations where you can facilitate, where they have choice and they have agency, that's what occurs in clinic. They choose. They decide, obviously. So it kind of gets a little bit murky, because then, you know, sometimes pet parents will bring treats, or sometimes I'll say, do you want to get some treats out? Because sometimes dogs they've just been a little bit of a silly goose, and they're like, you know what, I'm so excited, this is Ace, I'm gonna run around like an absolute divvy for an hour. And it's like, actually, could we maybe have a little treat, maybe think about sitting? Oh yeah, actually I will. So sometimes you need that food motivation, and technically that is causing a conflict in the dog. But the idea of using food is that, you know, it helps build. It just kind of keeps them a little bit still, because I will never chase a dog around the room to touch them. But the big thing is, there's no collar on, there's no harness, there's nothing. The dog is completely, there's nothing on them. The only time when that's not the case is if a dog has got a serious bite history. They'll have a collar on. Or they'll keep a harness on. That's the only time. That's just so, touch wood, you know, I've never had to do this, but worst case scenario, if something did happen, we've got something to kind of grab onto, you know.
Do you think that, you know, like, do you think that more of our dogs are in pain than we actually realise?
Yes.
1000%.
So the statistic is 80% of changes in behaviour can be attributed back to pain. That's in cats and dogs, right? I mean, fantastic study, really good study. I'd encourage anyone to kind of go and look at that study. Really, you know, big. They did it on like a case study kind of basis. Fantastic work. It's Daniel Mills or Daniel Millis, I think it was. But I think that number's actually under-recognising the whole population. So the dogs and cats that they got their statistics from were the ones that went to the vets. How many people do you know that don't take the dogs to the vets? So I think as well, like, these were animals that had been referred on to a veterinary behaviourist or veterinary behaviour specialist. The amount of dogs that I'm seeing who have been told are fine, or they're just old, or they're just aggressive, or, you know, I'm using a lot of quotation marks, when actually you just take time to just be with the dog, listen to what the pet parent is saying. And I'm like, there's pain here. And
it's funny, isn't it? Because I feel quite sad in that over the last few years, especially, not just because of, you know, working in the industry, and you start to, like what you just said, you start talking to owners, and they, you know, they tell you all these experiences that they've had by going to their vet, and, like, you know, it kind of is so repetitive, and I end up just like sat there, like, you know, rolling my eyes. And then, you know, like with Hurley, he's had, you know, he's nothing major, but like over the last couple of years, because he's getting older, you know, I've noticed significant changes in him that, you know, for different bits of which I've gone to the vets for. And it started off with him, he was having tremors, and it wasn't a seizuring, it was literally just shaking of like front and back legs. He wasn't asleep, and it was, you know, and he didn't need to be weight bearing, it was just kind of lying down or whatever. And you know, and I spoke to I went to my vets about it, and they said, you know, it's probably just an age thing. And it could, because I was like, you know, is it neurological? Because back that, whilst now he has had like a diagnosis, if you like, of CCD, like the dementia, but back then there was only a few little signs. So I was like, you know, could it be neurological or, you know, whatever? And then, you know, I started him on a few supplements and this, that, and the other. And I was more kind of like annoyed with myself, because it's only latterly in the last few months that I've kind of attributed it to pain. And, you know, and I just think, and I think that there is already a movement within the veterinary world, because I think people have access to so much now from a different viewpoint of people like yourself, like me, like nutritionists, whoever, that can give you a different, you know, just a different option of, you know,
it broadens your perspective. Yeah, I think for me, one of my biggest things for pet parents is that they make informed decisions about their dog's care. So I, you know, talk about pain management. That's my thing. I talk about pain management, and I say to pet parents, like, listen, like, I offer you a buffet of choice, and you pick what you think will work best for your dog. And I think sometimes, like, this isn't, you know, to vet bash. I need vets to do my job. I can't put my hands on a dog without a vet signing consent. They're the ones that prescribe, they're the ones that do the imaging, the surgery, they do a lot, right? But I think in those 10 minutes in that consultation, before they get to the point where they're discussing what you have brought the dog in for, they're risk assessing, am I going to get bit? They could have just had a PCS in the previous appointment, so they could be kind of like trying to, you know, process that. They could have had abuse from a previous customer. They might not have had a lunch break. They've got to do, you know, the vital checks. So they've got to listen to the heart, the lungs, and you know. So when you're talking to them and you can see them kind of working on your dog, they're doing a lot. They're spinning a lot of plates. It's a very high pressure job. So I think to empower pet parents, you know, they're the loudest voice in the conversation. They are the loudest voice in the conversation. They're the ones that drive the dogs to the groomers, take them to their therapy appointments, book them in at the vets, order their, you know, prescriptions, you know, all of that. So if we help educate owners to learn how to communicate effectively with vets, you know, I think they're limping. Well, you know, what limb are we looking at? Is it all the time? Is there a pattern to it? So my kind of thing is helping educate fellow professionals. So educating fellow professionals so they can then educate their customer base on how to speak to vets, how to spot things. Well, first of all, how you can spot things, then how to translate that to the owner in a way that's not absolutely terrifying, and then have the correct words to encourage that pet parent to go to the vet, but with an informed kind of little bit of background. This isn't a case of Dr. Google's diagnosed this. No. It's, I think that there's my dog is in pain because of change in behavior, posture, gait capabilities. And it'll just help the vet out in that 10-minute slot to get the absolute most. I mean, what's a vet appointment now? 50 quid? 50 quid for 10 minutes? You know?
I think for me I think, you know, in my experience as well, it's the frustration is absolutely, you know, like they've got an incredible task on their hands, you know, and I, you know, from the sounds of it, you know, there's like a really high suicide rate amongst.
I think that the fourth highest suicide, like out of all the professions, I think they're fourth highest for suicide rates. And I literally saw the other day, it was a vet who just gained his certificate in, like, you know, like he'd really gone above and beyond with all of his education, and he took his own life.
It's crazy. And
it is
crazy. You have to, like, I think for me, like, I think these people that want to be a vet study for 4 years, however, you know, like how 5 years, I don't know,
I
however
think
long.
it's 7.
Is it? Crikey.
Yeah, I'm sure it's 7.
Wow.
Might be lying,
but you know, like nobody's going to do that without having like the best intentions. But I don't know. I think it's the powers above the individual vets. You know, it's
the corporate,
the kind of, you know, like big
this
pharma companies that are taking over, and they're
this is why it's so important, if you are in a position to support your independent vets. As well, support your independent vets, because they are going against the grain. They are going out on a limb without hundreds and thousands, if not millions, billions of pounds from these corporates above. You have to remember these appointment prices are set not by the vet that stood in front of you, by people further up the ladder. So when you go to, I'm registered with 2 independent practices. I've got one which is like my GP practice, which is closer to home, and then I've got one about an hour away, which I go to for specialist care for herbal prescriptions and homeopathic prescriptions and acupuncture and things like that. But I've got my GP vet, but I've specifically picked an independent practice. I think they look after their staff better as well, so that's another one that's really important for me as well. And I think as well, supporting your independent groomers is another really, like, you know, this isn't a case of you've got, you know, 4 18-year-olds running a salon and they've been pushed through a quick course and there's absolutely no consideration given to handling, or well, not no consideration, but minimal consideration given to handling and welfare. You know, you only have to go into a very big kind of chain pet store and walk past their grooming salon to be pretty horrified. Like, the stuff that I've seen, I'm like, oh.
I mean, I've have, like, you know, a couple of mine have come from, you know, bigger corporate like companies, and I think, and again, it's the same scenario in that they are, you know, they have targets, like, you know, they have to process, you know, and it is a very much a process conveyor belt kind of system. You know, it's like, okay, 100 dogs within this week, or, but, you know, whatever the numbers might be, and, you know, they're left having to kind of weigh up, well, what do I do? Do I in order to achieve my targets, am I just clipping this dog off like one length all over just for the ease of it and then sending it out the door so I can do that? Or, you know, and a couple of my girls that are, well, one of my girls that is with me now, you know, she used to work at said place, and it, you know, it was very much you know, dogs that came in that were particularly aggressive, that in other situations she would prefer to refuse to groom, and, you know, she was told, no, you know, like, you've got to get it done. So you know, their management are putting not just the groomers at risk, but the dogs at risk, and it's all for, you know, it's all for profit, it's all for financial gain.
The public as well, because those grooming salons are set at the back of the store, so behind
a frosted screen or a glass, or, you know, like, it's that. But again, I think people are becoming privy to all of these things now, and people do. There has definitely been a shift in the decision making of owners, and I think it's slowly starting to leak into the nutritional side of it now as well. Like, you know, there's more supplements now, and you know, there's, I think people are like opening their eyes, and I think in another 10 years, the way that we care for our pets and what we do for them will like change tenfold again, you know. But there's always people amongst your, you know, within your line of work that's still letting the side down, you know, aren't there? I feel, you know, like there's still people that, you know, I see on socials, you know, like people with big following, you know, that are handling dogs in such an inappropriate way, and I just think, how is that kind of not picked up on, or how is that entertainment? And why is that entertainment? You know, it's just. And
I know which video you're on about with the bulldog in the bath.
Oh yeah, there's been a few like that. Yeah.
So there's a well, he calls himself a chiropractor. I don't believe he's had any official training, or if he has, it's been a £20 course on Wish.
Yeah.
And what I've seen him do to, like, so for example, I mean, you'll know how absolutely hideous this is. So a dog was kind of stood, and he's put his arms, so he's knelt behind the dog, he's put his arms underneath the dog's armpits, lifted it up onto its hind limbs and cracked its back against his back. And the dogs, you see, like, the dogs just completely stop, and they like look at him, and he goes, "Das gut." He's German. "Das gut."
Yeah.
And it's like, how on earth he has not been bit in the face, I don't know.
There is a clip where one does turn around to his face,
and he goes, "Whoa!" And I'm like, "You idiot!"
Yeah.
The thing is, though, for him to, quotation marks, learn his lesson, he is going to get bit in the face, and it'll be the dog that pays the ultimate price with loss of life. And even then, I'm not convinced that it's stopping, because people, like, when you see, the part that I'm interested in is looking at the comments and seeing how is the general public looking at this and thinking, and this is hilarious. And it goes into like this kind of like meme vibe. So it's like, oh, when the dog's paws like that, oh, that dog experienced, like, it's gone into its past life, or its life flashed before its eyes, or like, it's all very funny, it's all very jovial. And I think back, so I have to remind myself that I've not always been a pet professional. I was just a pet parent before that fed, absolutely horrendous food and blah blah blah.
We were all like
we're all like that.
Yeah.
And I remember discussing it with my husband, and I said, how would I have responded to that before? And he said, "You'd have laughed." Like, would I really? He went, "Yeah." He said, "You would have gone, oh, look at our dog's face." I used to, there's a video, I mean, this is going back years and years and years. I used to love this video, and it's a dog, and its owner's doing like a voiceover for him, and he goes, "Oh, I've got treats in there," and it goes, "Oh, the maple kind." It's this dog. Do you know which one? Do you know which video I'm on about?
One of the best,
isn't it? Right?
It never gets old.
It never gets old. So I used to love that video, and then I looked back at it, and I was like, "Right,
that was such a good impression."
Is it? Yeah, because I've watched it so many times. And he goes, and I gave it to the cat. He goes, "Oh, you're kidding!" Like, and I looked at it, and I thought, that is still, like, I can look at that now as a pet professional and go, that's still funny.
Yeah,
but it's funny because it's the narration. That's the funny element. Like, the dog does a yawn that potentially could be interpreted as a stress yawn.
Yeah.
So I was like, but in the most part, the dog is sat there and, looking. My dog's stress yawn at me when I'm eating my dinner.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I really want your dinner." And it's like, no, I'm eating my tea, for God's sakes. But, like, do you remember the video of the bulldog on a skateboard? Like, now I look at that and I'm like, oh God, that's awful. That is, I can just see danger. I can just see, like, how does that dog have any agency in that situation? Like, oh, but he put himself on it. And it's like, yeah, but he can't get off until it stops moving. So isn't it weird though, like how your perspective just massively shifts? I mean, my perspective on handling dogs has changed vastly over the past 10 years. So I'm very honest about this. When I first had dogs and I was, dog walker, I subscribed to what I consider balanced training. So I use slip leads and lead corrections. No e-collars, prong collars, nothing like that. But still I used aversives. And it was a big kind of learning curve that actually this isn't okay. This is why does this feels uncomfortable now. It feels uncomfortable now because I'm starting to understand that my dog is not just my dog. My dog is a sentient being, and they're not pulling on the lead to spite me. They're not barking to wind me up, So it's been like this huge journey. So now I'm like completely on the other end of the scale. And my dog stands on the dining room table because
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I think that's the thing, isn't it? Like it's about, I always try to, especially when I'm like sharing things on, you know, on Insta or whatever, I always try to, you know, and I'm very much aware that sometimes, you know, when I say, if I'm like type something out, that, you know, I always kind of like spend a few minutes to read it, because I'm like, is it preachy? Is it, you know, is it, you know, like does it make me come across like I am this kind of all knowledgeable kind of being that's never stepped a foot wrong, like in terms of what the choices that I've made for my dogs? Because my God, you know, like when Hurley was 4 years old, he weighed 12 kilos. You know,
he did not.
yeah, genuinely.
Good
like,
God.
and my friends used to call him a barrel, and I was like, oh, I like, you know, I was just completely like blind to the fact that he was so overweight. And if I was to show you a picture, you know, like from then to now, he's unrecognizable, you know. But so we've all been there. And I think I've forgotten where I was going to go with this now.
How we've developed our understanding. Like I always say, like when I do like my training courses or anything like that, or even like when I'm talking to pet parents, because when pet parents come to clinic, they are vulnerable in that space. So I always say to people, you know, don't think that I'm sat here on my high horse and I knew everything from day dot, because I didn't. I fed the prescription food, I vaccinated annually, did flea and worm treatment, used balance training, and used a ball flinger. I've done it all. I've done it all. I was like, so it's only because it comes from a place of love. When I advise people, it comes from a place of love, because I wish that someone would have had that conversation with me years ago.
But don't you think as well, like the two things here? So the first thing that I was just going to reference a second ago is it was only, so there's a woman in called Julie Harris. She's kind of like Mother Earth in the grooming industry. She's amazing, and she does a thing called Kind Hands tour, and where she just kind of ventures around the UK or like different events or whatever it might be, and to talk about how, you know, our role as groomers and how we handle dogs and kind of reading their behavior and their, you know, what they are capable of doing, breed by breed and by size, whatever. And it was only, you know, like I think I can't even remember when it was, but, and she's got YouTube videos out and all sorts, but she, you know, she was talking about, you know, like the structure of the you know, the front of the dog and their shoulders structure and their joints and, you know, all this kind of jazz, and was talking about how, you know, when we are doing things like nails, you know, or when we are trimming like legs or anything like that, you know, what is the capability of that particular dog? How far, what is their range of motion?
They can't go back and out.
You know, like, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory. I mean, it should be self-explanatory to know that a dog can't go like, you know, like that, or too high or too back. But, you know, and quite often, you know, we might think that the dog's just being a pain in the arse because it's fidgeting or, you know, like whatever. And it's so easy to kind of not lose your patience, but it's easy to think that the dog is misbehaving. But actually, what is the dog saying to you? I can't bend my leg that way. You know, and I think it, you know, that was very much and it's definitely something that now it's all I think about when I'm, you know, doing my dogs or certainly training, you know, like students, because it's a fundamental, and why people still don't kind of put as much focus and energy into that side of it, as opposed to the styling of a leg or an ear or whatever, is a bit, you know, is something which still needs kind of, you know, work. But also, like, secondly to that, don't you think that the reason why you know what you know now, and the reason why I know what I know now, is because you've made that decision yourself to educate yourself, haven't you? You know, like you've gone and you've done extra courses, or you've sat on a night and read a book, or read, like, you know, kind of, you know, like, or you
have to be very driven to want to to educate yourself. I think for me, it's a want to always bring my best. Always bring my A game. And the day you stop learning is, it's a dangerous day. You never should stop learning. Even when I think back now to when I first qualified and what I know now, and just experience and being hands-on with hundreds, if not thousands of dogs, or, like my handling technique is completely different. So it was interesting when you were saying about dogs that, they can't bend their, if they can't bend their legs in a certain way, it made me think about dogs who sometimes have the mechanical ability to move a leg, so they can do this, but they have so you have a physical point of bind. So the way that I explain this is I can put my arm out to the side and that feels comfy. I'm not strict, but if I go up like that, okay, I've gone past my point of bind, because that now feels like a stretch if I put my hand above my head. With a dog, they have that, okay, so they have the physical point of bind, so it's finding kind of where that is. But before you even get to that, dogs can have an emotional point of bind. So if I know that a limb can move, because I've watched them walk into clinic, I know mechanically it can move. If I try gently guide that limb and the dog goes, nope, not doing that, that's an emotional point of bind.
Wow.
So I'm not going to push it. I'm not going to push that limb. There's ways you can manipulate the joint on certain pressure points to get the leg to kind of ping out. But actually, that dog is telling you no. And that could be because something's sore. It could be that actually they're just nervous and they don't know what you're going to do. It could be that they've had previous trauma to that area. So they have had someone that's handled them too rough and they've had that agency taken away from them. And that's then instilled fear. We have to remember that the memory of pain is still a painful experience.
Yeah, of course. But it's like us, isn't it? Like
Absolutely. So even though I can do this and I can just about stretch, I've hurt my shoulder at the moment, so I keep stretching it to try and kind of like soothe the muscles that's in there. However, if someone came and went to manipulate my arm, I think my emotional point of bind would be a lot lower, because I've lost agency in that moment, because that person can't feel my pain experience. So that it's so easy to tip and go into that
anticipation of that pain as well, almost.
That's still painful. Painful.
It reminds me, just with you, before I forget, just with us talking about self-education, continued learning and stuff. So I wanted to pick your brains, because are you now doing, is it a biomedical health degree?
Yes, so I've just started biomedical science degree.
So I had to cut the conversation short, because then we started talking about shop and our plans that we have going forward next year to be collaborating. I'm super excited to be collaborating with Michelle. She's incredibly passionate, dedicated individual, all for the sake of our dogs. I hope you enjoyed this chat as much as I did, and I have got some super duper guests lined up for my next episode on Hop, Skip and a Jump. For now, take care, lots of love to you and your dogs. Have a fantastic day.